What's going on, everybody? You are tuned in to the Hot List. I come to y'all Monday through Friday at 12 o'clock Central Standard Time. We hang out and we talk about real estate topics. We talk either about real estate questions, concerns in a segment that's called the Question of the Day, that are actual questions submitted by listeners of the podcast. If you're interested in getting your question answered or getting your question answered on air, all you have to do is simply shoot me a message, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, or in the comments section in the podcast player of choice that you are enjoying this episode on. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe so as new episodes become available, you get notified. They're automatically downloaded to your podcast player of choice. And of course, don't forget to leave me a review. Let me know what you think about the podcast, and make sure you're sending it to other people as well. So I hope y'all are having a fantabulous Monday. It is Monday. It is sunny here in Kansas, thankfully. It's a little warmer than it has been over the last several days. So I am grateful about that as well. For those tuning in live, no, it is not 12 o'clock Central Standard Time. I do have an appointment at 12, and that's why I want to get this done early. So today's question of the day: are there ways to make my house look larger? And this is a question that I have asked myself, I don't know how many times since owning this house. At one point, with having three three kids in the house plus their, quote unquote stuff, plus my wife's stuff, my stuff, things that we've collected over the time that we've been together. Our house was pretty claustrophobic. I mean, it almost felt like the walls were starting to close in on us. And there's no doubt in my mind that having space in your home is important. It If not, it should be, because you want enough space that everything isn't cluttered. Because the more cluttered a home is, it makes the home more unpleasant and feels, like I said, like the walls are coming in on you. And of course, adding space to your home can be a huge project, not to mention costly doing it. And the options available to you are going to depend on the layout of your home as well as other factors. Because for my house, for example, because it's 1.5 story, and with the way that our lot is set up, I can't go I can't go to the east. I can't go any further to the west because of property lines. I can't go into my backyard because then it's going to eat up my backyard. And because of zoning, I can't go front. And because I already have a 1.5 story house, it's going to be even more difficult to go up and add another story. So with the layout of your home, it may either not make sense or just may not be possible. So what we're going to talk about today, based on the question that was asked, I'm going to assume that you would like to make your home seem like it's more open without any type of major changes or remodeling, as well as not wanting to sink a ton of money into it. Hang on just a second. All right. Got a sip of my tea. I'm just, side note, didn't plan this, but are you a tea drinker? I do like me some tea, especially with all the talking that I do. Tea is really good for vocal cords. Just, side note. So, when answering the question of the day today, are there ways to make my house look larger? We're going to talk about 3 ways to create the illusion of more indoor space. And we're going to kick it off. Number one, keep it light. This is one of the easiest ways to make rooms seem larger and create the illusion of more space by lightening things up. Not just making it brighter, but putting lighter color paint on on the walls, because those dark walls absorb light and they make those already dark rooms even darker. This in turn creates the appearance that your room is actually smaller than it is. That's why, you know, well, I don't know about you. That's why we never gave our kids the option to pick the paint color for their room, because it was always a dark color that they wanted to paint it. And while it may be appealing for a couple years, then you're have we've talked about covering dark walls in a previous episode last week. Then you've got more work on top of that. So that just with that dark room already being darker, that room feels smaller than it actually is. So by painting the walls, maybe even the ceiling, depending on what type of ceiling that you have, you want to go with some type of lighter shade, like your whites, your yellows, maybe light browns, or even some light grays. This is going to lighten the entire room and make it seem larger overall. Another way that you can do this as well is to brighten the space. This is going to eliminate any shadows that are in the room that, again, add to that illusion that the room is smaller. So by eliminating the shadows, you're creating that illusion of space. And keep in mind, shadows aren't cast with just large objects in your room, like dressers, TVs, lamps. They're also cast by smaller ones depending on the lighting. So if you have popcorn ceilings or some type of tile ceiling, those are going to cast shadows as well. Now, I'm not suggesting that you cover every inch of your room in light. I'm just saying this is going to help reduce the shadows that appear in the room and will just brighten it up and make it feel and look larger. Number 2 on the list, low and open. This is how I found out that I am boring. It was what my wife called me. So, and I'll explain that in just a second. So this can be accomplished by keeping your items in the room relatively low and unobtrusive to the center of the room. So by not having a focal point in the center, this gives the room more of an open look and feel, and it makes it look like there's more space in that particular room. So when you choose your furniture layout and design, you want to go with some type of design or flow that lacks high peaks. So you don't want to have, 2 chairs with a floor lamp in between right as soon as you walk in, because then your view of that room is automatically obstructed. What you want to do is you want to have their attention drawn somewhere that their eyes go. Keep everything attractive and focus more on a minimalist approach versus the complex and cluttered approach. Now, you don't necessarily want to keep everything at the same level. That's again where I found out I was boring, and my military side of me came out, because I told my wife, I was like, let's just line the walls, put everything, we'll do we'll do some lamps and we'll do chairs, and just don't go too high. And she just kind of looked at me like, do you even hear the words coming out of your mouth kind of look. But you want to avoid keeping everything the same height and adding decorations on or near the walls, because what you want to do is, like I said, help draw your attention to the walls or to a focal point in a room. And this not only makes the room more appealing if your line of sight or someone else's line of sight is focused on an item at the far side of the room. So for example, on the far side of our room from our front door, we have a floor lamp and some plants. And because it's just far enough away, this helps create the illusion of space. And this is actually achieved because our brains register items of interest being further away than anything else. And because they seem like they're further away than something else, then our brain registers more area and more space in that room. Uh, and it makes it seem like there's an additional distance, even though, the decorations or the lamps, whatever you have, could be right next to or right behind furniture. Your brain is going to register that it's further away, so the room is actually larger than what you think it is. And number 3 on the list is probably my favorite because it happened to me. Watch the clutter. Clutter is the enemy of space. I'm sure I don't have to tell any parent that is listening that. Uh, for example, when all 3 kids were living at home, our house often looked like their bedrooms threw up. I, with 2 teenagers and a toddler, it wasn't as bad as 3 toddlers, but they often fought like toddlers, if that makes sense. Because with all of their stuff, or maybe even your kids' stuff scattered everywhere, even the largest room in the house is going to feel smaller just because of all those items and all that clutter just being piled and stacked in one room. So when you're trying to maximize the amount of space that your room appears to have, you want to avoid over decorating and keep the clutter or decorations on the walls or surfaces that you have. Keep that to a minimum. I mean, you don't want pictures or mirrors or paintings, every 3 inches on your walls, because people are going to look in and they're not going to know where to look first. It's going to be just they're just going to be overloaded. And that point is especially important if you have some type of plants or similar items. It's easy to overdo this, especially with plants, because early on, you take care of the plants. When you buy them, they're smaller and it's easier to put more of them there. Over time, they're going to grow larger. They're either going to grow wider, they're going to grow taller, and that room looks more like a nursery than a living room. True story. Furniture can also be lumped into this category. So if you have a smaller room and it's packed full of furniture, it is definitely going to feel like those walls are moving in. For example, if you have a living room that's maybe 15 by 12 and you have a couch, you have a love seat, you have a chair, you have 3 end tables, you have a coffee table, you have 4 lamps, 3 decorative tables for what purpose? I don't know. a TV, a media center, and 4 plants, that's a lot going on in one room that's 15 by 12. I wish that I was talking hypotheticals in that example, but that is actually real life situation of what my house was just a couple of years ago. I had all of those items in a 15 by 12 living room. It got to the point that if the kids' stuff was down there or on top of everything else, we had to turn sideways to get anywhere in the living room. I mean, it was just absolutely crazy. By figuring out what we could rid out and remove, so we ended up removing a love seat, but adding a chair, so we had the same amount of seats. We removed the coffee table because nobody really used it other than when Chase was younger, he used to jump off of it, which wasn't ideal. Removed a couple tables that were just kind of a catch-all. Our living room feels and looks a lot larger now than it ever has, just by reducing the amount of clutter. I mean, it is amazing what happens. Keep in mind, your goal for this is to create the look and the feel of more space in any given room. So, what I would recommend is pick one particular room, review the items that are currently in that room. Which items do you use regularly versus which ones are just a catch all or taking up space? By removing and not replacing those items, just picture, or you may actually have to do it. How much space is that going to create? Remember, I can't say this enough. You want to take a minimalist approach here, and you will absolutely be blown away how well this works and how well it looks. So those are the top 3 ways to create the illusion of indoor space. Number one, again, was keep it light. Not just brighten the room up, but get the room painted a lighter color. Those dark walls are going to absorb light instead of reflect light. So you want something in in the color shades of like a white, yellow, maybe some type of light brown or gray. Those are really going to lighten up, and maybe even by painting your ceiling, you can get a little bit more light reflecting in there. Number two, low and open. You want to create a look in your house that has kind of a low a low point and not just a spike or a high point as soon as you come in the door, and create something on the opposite end of the room that's going to be a focal point for yourself, or when visitors come in, that's going to be their focal point. And because it's on the other side of the room behind the furniture, that's going to make the room look and feel larger. And then finally, number three, which was my favorite again, watch out for the clutter. If you have a room that had, like the example I gave of our living room, that had the couch, love seat, a chair, 3 end tables, a coffee table, 4 lamps, three, I guess, decorative tables. I don't know what else to call them. A TV, media center, and 4 plants. That is a lot going on in one room. So go one room at a time. Write down everything that is currently in that room and how often you use it. Is it used on a regular basis, or is it just used to take up space and has become a catch-all? Remove that item. Don't replace it. Just remove that item, and just that'll just give you an idea of how much more space and the look of a larger room that's going to give you. So that is going to do it for me in the hot list today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you have a question of the day that you would like answered, you're not sure where to start, I would love to be the real estate resource that you reach out to and start with. If you have that question, there is a very high probability somebody else is going to have that same or similar question. Let's get it answered for you. Let's create a video about that so I can use it for future content, because that is the best way that I can not only help you but help others, is by creating these episodes and getting that information and those questions answered. So thank you guys again for tuning in. Again, I'm your host, Matt Johnson with Keller Williams Realty. I do this because your experience matters and should be trusted with a veteran. Y'all have a phenomenal Monday, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.